All right, hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, with your boy, your favorite conservatarian contrarian, Jeff Charles. And I've got another fire, insane, volcanic interview for you today. Another great conversation. I think you're going to love this. But before I go into everything, as usual, you know what I'm going to say. Like this video, share it right now. Hit that clickety clack, clack, clack. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, subscribe right now. Stop hating, get on there, and give me that subscription. That way you'll be informed whenever I upload a brand new video. Also, want to remind you, as always, that LibertyNation.com is a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective. Check out LibertyNation.com for all of your conservatarian news, original articles and analysis, videos, podcasts, Liberty Nation Radio, and their signature TV program, The Conservative Five, all on LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback. Now then, let me get to it. Now, you all probably already know who this man is. I mean, there's no way not to at this point. He was a figurehead in the Trump administration. He is the only pastor I know who spends time trolling on Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Pastor Darrell Scott.
Where's the applause button, man? You're supposed to hit the applause button.
I know. I still need to get one. Like Hotep Jesus has that things that he does. He's got that fancy rig. I need to step up my game. When I interviewed him, I felt like I was coming up short, but it's all right.
Hey man, thanks for having me on, though. I appreciate it.
It is a pleasure. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, and I think this is going to be a really good conversation. But why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself? You know, your background, all that good stuff.
I've been pastoring my church now for 28 years. I became a believer 40 years ago, actually. And, that's always part of the journey. And, I'm going to be honest, I really don't like talking about myself a lot because to me, it's not a lot to talk about, or either it's too much to talk about. I came up out the streets. I gave my life to the Lord. And so I've got two journeys. I had the pre-Christian journey and the post-Christian journey. And it's almost like two different people in the same body. The man I am is not the man I was, even though every now and then, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Right, Michael Corleone.
I find stuff coming out from back then that I have to go back and try to readdress. The Apostle Paul said, that when I try to do good, evil is present.
Right.
And he talked about that constant war with the flesh. So wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? When I want to do good, I do bad. When I want to do bad, whatever. So, one thing I think that gives me, though, I have a different perspective from a lot of people. I try to be honest. Shakespeare said in one of his plays, "To thine own self be true." And that's what I at least try to do when I lay my head on my pillow at night. I try to at least be true to myself and not have to deny certain realities. I try to be fair in my assessments and judgments. And I try to be more empathetic than I am critical or sympathetic. And a lot of those that people look down on, I tend to empathize with simply because I've been there, done that, and know a lot of people that are still there doing that. You understand what I mean? So I try not to be harsh and critical and judgmental on things that society considers to be harsh and critical and judgmental about. I'll give you a case in point, since we're going to wind up going here anyway. Yeah. Society looks down on the dry high, but society looks up to the wet high. In other words, those that indulge in dry highs are the scum of the earth, while those that are alcoholics can be in Congress and Senate.
Oh.
So it's two people trying to get into an altered state of consciousness. But,
right.
So it's the same goal. It's the same goal. It's just a different pathway to there. So you look at the guy, and I can't help but to think of George Floyd and say, well, because he used a certain type of drug, he's a scumbag. Well, he's a scumbag because he passed a $20 counterfeit bill and he uses powder or heroin or something. He's a scumbag. This guy's an embezzler that's an alcoholic but he's an upstanding member of the community. And so this guy's worthy of death. This guy's worthy of a slap on the wrist. And see, that's the type of hypocrisy that I try not to engage in. I try to look at it from a fair perspective.
Why do we do that? I mean, why do people do that? Because I think pretty much everybody has been guilty of that at some point. Maybe some more than others. But why do you think we do that?
A lot of people aren't able to judge righteous judgment. A lot of people are very hypocritical in their outlook and their perspectives, and they really don't take the time to, as the Bible says, let a man examine himself. A lot of people don't engage in self-examination until they reach a certain point in life, and usually it's rock bottom.
Right.
It's rock bottom. We'll talk about in the church world about ministering, and you have a lot of people that say, well, I minister to the down and out. But I think it's more effective when you minister to the up and out. It's easier to reach the down and out because they have nowhere else to go. It's the up and out that the problem is with. They're out, but they're up because they think they're doing good physically or socially or whatever, that they're not in a bad condition. They think because they're doing good externally that they're not in a bad condition internally.
They're not aware.
The opposite is true. So a lot of people don't engage in a proper assessment of themselves. And when you can't properly assess yourself, it's hard to properly assess others.
That's true, and a lot of us don't. And when you're on the up and out, like you were saying, you're not even aware that something's wrong, or you might be aware, but you're ignoring it on purpose. So either way, you're not addressing it.
When I gave my life to the Lord, when I became a Christian, I was probably at that point in time doing better than I was ever doing in my life. I was selling dope out bow draw legs. I had a good clientele. I knew how to, this was 1982. I knew how to cook cocaine and turn it into crack when a lot of people didn't know how to do it. So I was in demand for those services to do that. I was doing good. And so, people would say, well, I was down and out and God saved me. No, I was up and out. I was making more money at that time than I'd ever made in my life. And by all exterior extensive purposes, I was doing great. And I had no intention of giving my life to the Lord. The way it even happened when I look back on it. And, in the church world, you have a lot of people that talk about God said this and God said that. And I saw God here and there. And you have people that claim to be prophets and they're able to look into the future. I see God more in hindsight than I see him in foresight or even midsight. I use it as an example, Joseph. When Joseph was in prison, he wasn't saying this is God. I'm in the will of God. He didn't realize God was in it until he was sitting on that throne as the prime minister of Egypt. Right. And so I have a lot of situations in my life where I can look back and say, man, that was God right there. But at the time, I didn't think it was. And, the night, my journey began in that respect. I was cooking some dope on a Friday night. I was cooking up some cocaine, and I was spraying down some weed with some PCP to get out there and sell it. And back then, you needed 151 rum to keep the torch lit, to keep the pipe lit. I ran out. And at the time, you couldn't buy the state liquor stores. You couldn't buy liquor after 6 o'clock in the evening. After 6, they're closing on Friday. Okay. And so I sent my wife to the after hours joint. Go around there. It's about 7 o'clock. Go around after hours joint. Give me a pint of rum.
This is in Ohio or which state?
Ohio. That's in Ohio. And so then she didn't come back home till midnight. And I'm wondering what the heck is going on. I'm sitting here. I'm getting high. I'm getting my stuff. And what happened? The guy lived across the street from her. And he's actually a bishop in the church now. Somehow, and my wife does not get into peer pressure. She's not one of the type of people. He talked her into the car, talked her into church. She came home, said, I've been to church. I'm a Christian now. You got to get out.
Wow.
We can't live together. We can't live together anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. You got to go. And I'm like, girl, what are you tripping off of? What do you mean?
It's interesting. Yeah, when you told me about how you became a Christian 40 years ago, you had just gotten done telling me that you're celebrating your 40th anniversary. Yeah. So I was wondering if that coincided.
But the reason it happened was she stayed on my case for about a month. She was going to church, man, 3-4 times a week. And every time she would try to get me to come and I wouldn't go. And finally, one Friday night, I had just copped up. I mean, all my money, re-up. I'm about to get out here. And she's crying and begging me to come to church. It was a Friday night. And I said, look, I'm going to go this time. Then don't ask me no more. And I wound up in church. The guy preached a message. I remember the message. It was called Back to Bethel. And he's like, whoever wants to give their life to the Lord, stand up. And I was like, I ain't standing up. And I found myself standing up. Come down to this altar. I ain't going down there. I found myself going down there. Pray this prayer. I ain't praying it. I prayed the prayer. They took us down in the basement to baptize us. The deacon that baptized me, a guy named Lawrence Caffey, the last time I saw that guy had been several years ago in a dope deal. And he looked at me, I'm like, you here? He said, hey man, welcome home. And they took me down there. I gave my life to the Lord. I came upstairs, I told the pastor, I said, man, I got drugs at home. He said, well, just go home and get rid of it and come back. So I went home, got all my dope. Now, I done just copped up now. All my money is here.
Yeah.
Go to the toilet. Then I was like, nah, you know what? I'm going to finish selling it. Then I ain't going to do it no more. And my wife was there crying and stuff. No, flush it, flush, flush it. I flushed all my dope down the toilet. Now, you know what's funny? From that night, and I started smoking cigarettes when I was in the 5th grade. I was about 11 years old. I've been drinking since I was in the 6th grade. Everything, every high you could think of, I done it. Everything except for this new stuff that came along afterwards. But, you know, back then, all kind of pills, acid, sequels, chocolate mescaline, purple mescaline, red devils, weed, coke, heroin, all that. Ain't nothing I haven't done, right? From that night, I never smoked another cigarette. I've never had another drop of liquor. I drank more liquor, Jeff, by the time I was 15 years old than you'll drink in 3 lifetimes. I've never had another drop of alcohol. I've never smoked another cigarette. I never touched anything else from that night. And I love to tell my church, I said, whatever that preacher preached that day, it's still working 40 years later.
Wow.
Everything was cold turkey. Now you're talking about, I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day when I was in the 7th grade. We drank liquor. That was what we did. You know, I had a nightclub downtown. We had a nightclub downtown. Liquor was, and so, you know, I did that. We went back to church. And after about another week, we told the pastor, we said, man, we're living together. Because some people in the church knew we were living together. We were living in sin. And you know what he said? He said, if they're really saved, the Holy Ghost will take care of it. Leave them alone. We went to the pastor. We said, hey, man, I had to get a job. Now I got to get a job.
Right.
Because, which happened, I got one pretty quick. And I had to get a job. I was driving a hotel shuttle bus. I had to get a job. And so about 2 weeks later, we go to the pastor because we're feeling convicted and say, man, we're living in sin. We're living together. He looked at me and said, you love her? I said, yeah. You love him? Yeah. Be in my office tomorrow and we'll take care of it. He said, no, go get a marriage license and be in my office by Friday. We went downtown, got the marriage license. Came back, got married in the pastor's office on lunchtime from work. Then I had to go back to work. You know where we went for our honeymoon? McDonald's. We went to McDonald's. I had to go back to work. And she was working too. And we had to go back to work, man. We had a home.
You had a Mick wedding?
Family. We had bills, yeah. But I said, baby, because it's our wedding day, you can biggie size it.
So I have a question.
So I had to start over then, man. Everything had to start all over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. But here's what I want to know. I mean, because like you said, you were doing well. You had all that money. You were doing drugs, whatever. And then you went to that church. Can you tell me what was going through your mind from the moment that you stood up when they gave that altar call to the moment where you flushed those drugs down the toilet? What was going on in your head through all of that?
Like when I walked into the church, it was a church in the hood, right? And I'm looking around being judgmental. It wasn't a storefront. They had a building, but I'm being judgmental because, you know, I'm thinking of great big Catholic cathedrals or something. I'm looking around being judgmental. And I also say to myself, I bet I look like something the cat drug in that night. Because I was tore up when I went in. I walked in high. I walked out sober. You understand what I'm saying? And so, hey, man, I didn't go in there. All I did was go in there to get it over with. Let me go in and get out of here.
Just to shut her up. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it was almost like I was in some type of vortex or something. You know what I mean? The message resonated, gave my life to the Lord. They baptized me straightway. And we went home. And I was just focused on it, man. And you know one thing? I never looked back. I haven't looked back from then until now. I never regretted it. It's just, it happened. It was real. It was genuine. That born again experience was real. And it was just a new person. The old person was left there. I just became and you know what I did? I moved away from where I was at. And, you know, I knew one thing. There's a scripture in the Bible that says evil communications corrupt good manners. And so I knew my wife got saved and was able to instantly. She got her friend saved, her brother saved, her sister saved. Everything. I wasn't like that. If I'd have went back around them Negroes I came up with, I'd have been back out there. So I had to isolate for the purpose of insulation. And so we moved, and it was almost like a wilderness experience. We moved onto the other side of town, and I kept it very simple. Go to work, go to church, go home. Go to work, go to church, go to the grocery store, go home. And read. I always was an avid reader anyway. Read, study, learn as much as I can about the Bible as I can. And that was it for like years, man, like 3-4 years. I got a brand new set of friends. I completely dropped off the scene where I was at. They didn't know where I was at. I walked away from that nightclub that we had downtown, left my stake down there. I didn't care. And I didn't want to see anybody, man. I immersed myself in church and in the Christian experience.
So, your story reminds me of that verse, and I can't remember which book it's in, but it talks about how if a wife is with an unbelieving husband, to kind of model, what a Christian life looks like and to pray for him and all that stuff. And we always think of that as taking like a long time. But with you, for most people, it could be like 5 years or so. With you, it seemed like it was like 5 minutes. Like, I mean, I know she worked on you for a bit, but
a month. It was about a month.
About a month. Yeah, and then finally you said, okay, woman, I'll do it just to shut you up. And then it's just amazing how God worked through her. And then what you just said just now, how she went and got everybody else into it. Like, that's like an anointing that you don't see very often. Like, he used her powerfully.
And she's still like that now. So, it's not like it's dissipated or anything like that. Whereas once again with me, my journey was a little bit different. I couldn't face the folks that I was around. I would have been back out. I know me. I would have been back out there. But when I got strong enough to face them, it was no problem. And you know what I find funny? There's some guys that go to my church right now, elders in my church, that I was out in them streets with. See, when I was in my circle of association at that time, I was always the youngest one. When I was 18, the guys I kicked it with was 30, 31, 32.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying? I was always the youngest one. And I was in the game. Like I said, we had a nightclub downtown in the late 70s. We did a lot of live entertainment. We were the first club to have Curtis Blow with Sugar Hill Gang. I kicked it with a lot of entertainers. In fact, the guy that taught me how to cook dope was a member of Parliament Funkadelic. So we were in that lane. We ran with a lot of the R&B stars. I knew a lot of those guys. Those were the things we did. A lot of live entertainment and all that. But it's guys with me now in my church. They're the elders of my church. And I look at them and say, hey, man, they just don't know. They think you're just some old square that's old. You're 70 years old now. You're 66. They think you're just some old squares in church. They just don't know that back in the day, them dudes were some stone cold killers. I mean, some stone cold, streetwise. My dude Mike's hair was down to here. He carried a nickel-plated 45 and was pimping. He was pimping and robbing and stealing and killing and selling drugs. This was my circle of association. That world was my world. I didn't know good girls. I wasn't around good. Most of the women I was around when I was coming up was prostitutes. And so that was normal for us. Pimps and prostitutes and drug dealers and killers and murder. That was normal. That was our normal. And the people that weren't doing that weren't normal. You get what I'm saying? I mean, I had a time in my life where I probably didn't see daylight for 3 or 4 years because all our activity was at night. We slept during the day. And we get up in the evening and we hit them streets. We didn't even open our club till 10 o'clock at night. And so that's why I tend to not be judgmental on that segment of society because they're simply deluded and deceived into thinking that their wrong is right and other people's right is wrong. And their thinking has to be changed. They have to be transformed, as the Bible says, by the renewing of their mind.
Yeah.
And so I'm not as, hey man, both my brothers still out in the streets. Both my brothers still on drugs. My nephews, my favorite nephews, all 3 of them in the penitentiary. My one nephew, he might have put a couple people to sleep, but that's my nephew and I love him. You understand what I mean? And when I look at him, he's a good boy, but he wasn't no joke out in the streets. He was me on steroids. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So once again, I tend to be less judgmental on that segment of society. I just think that they're lost and they need to be found.
So, I mean, a lot of people talk about why a lot of people get into that lifestyle. I mean, and I've had family members and people that I've known that got into it. Luckily, I was shielded from it. But why does this happen? Like, what are like the top contributors to this from what you've seen coming up, even now?
Well, let me tell you something. I grew up in a two-parent home. My mother and father got married and stayed married till the day she died. We were
Oh,
never on welfare. We were never poor. My father always had a decent enough job. When we moved into our neighborhood. When I was growing up, we moved into the next street I grew up on. I was like 5 years old. We were like the second black family on the street. So I grew up around white kids until the white flight occurred in the late '60s, and
mm,
they all moved out. But we were like the second, third black family on the street. I played with white kids, white girls, and I had a good role. My father went to work every day. That Negro retired when he was like 70 years old, got bored and unretired. And he worked again until he was 80, and he's still alive now. He'll be 90 this year. He
wow.
always had a job. We were never on welfare. I didn't know what a food stamp was till I saw a friend of mine with one. We didn't live in the ghetto. We lived in a decent middle-class neighborhood. But I gravitated to the bad element. Now, when I was coming up, I was in major work class. I went to the psychiatrist when I was in the first grade. They had to take this test. And after that, the psychiatrist looked at me and said, you can be anything you want to when you grow up. And they shipped me to another school in the major work class, the honors class. And a lot of guys that were in my class, actually, they went on to be like my friend Raymond Pierce. Raymond was my best friend. He was in Bill Clinton's cabinet, Assistant Secretary of Education. My other friend was in my same class, Derek Harkins. Derek was Obama's faith-based guy. These guys copied my homework. You understand what I'm saying? But I had two lives. I had the school life and the home life. And the school life was with the good kids. The home life was with the bad kids. And it's just, I gravitated to that, I don't know, because of the flaws in the human condition. One thing about the human condition, when man fell, man didn't fall up. Man fell down. And there's something in the human condition that gravitates more towards the bad than it does towards the good. And so it's not because of fathers or lack of fathers in the home or this and that. It's simply because of the flaws that are in the human condition that will cause people to gravitate. And to some people's bad as other people's good. Some people's good as other people's bad. And so, we try to make a judgmental. It's like a judgmental, but it's like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They had one side of the tree was good, one side of the tree was bad. But in the end, it was all bad. The entire tree was bad. So that's why the Bible says there's none righteous, no, not one. So you'll have people that will figure, because I don't indulge in certain things. You'll get people that'll look down on George Floyd for passing the counterfeit 20, but they cheat on their taxes.
Well, and George Floyd probably didn't even know he had a counterfeit 20. I mean, most people who have those don't know they have them. There was never any evidence that he was involved in a counterfeit operation. But but you're right. I mean,
there's nobody that tries to pass a counterfeit 20 that when it's rejected, they go sit outside the store. He done got the hell out of there. Believe me, I passed counterfeit 20s before, and I got the hell out of there. Whether they accepted it or didn't accept it, I got the hell out of there. He would have got the hell out of there. He wouldn't sit in this. Watch this. This whole George Floyd OD narrative. Now, we just saw those kids at West Point that overdosed on fentanyl. You notice the media is not making any big deal out of it. They're at West Point, they OD. That had been 4 kids at an HBCU that OD. These boys are being depicted as victims of circumstance. There have been 4 black kids that OD'd at an HBCU. They'd have been 4 scumbags. But notice something. They hit it, boom, they dropped, ambulance came and took them. They was basically dead on arrival to the hospital. They want to tell me George Floyd had a lethal amount of fentanyl in his system, but he was able to go back outside. He was able to have a lethal amount of fentanyl in the system, walk inside, try to pass a counterfeit 20, go back outside, sit in the car and chill, wait for the police to get there, resist arrest.
Right.
And you get a knee in his neck. But let me tell you something about overdose, because I've got a whole lot of friends that have done it. OD does not happen on a time release basis. You quit it. Boom, bam. That's it. Ain't no boom, and I sit back and a half hour later, I OD. It doesn't happen like that. So that was a false narrative. I don't care who believed it. I don't want to hear that he had a lethal amount. If he had a lethal amount of fentanyl, a lethal amount is a lethal amount. He would have been dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. I mean, because you told me your story about how you came to Christ and that whole journey. Tell me about the journey towards becoming a minister or becoming a pastor.
Well, once I got saved, my wife and I immersed ourselves in the church culture. Mm-hmm. And so when I at my first church I was at, I had a chauffeur's license because I drove a truck, and I was a church bus driver. And we were the type, if I'm a part of something, I'm all the way in. I can never be peripherally involved.
Right.
Once I became church, I immersed myself in it. And like I said, I always loved to read. So I read, studied, and pretty much did anything in the church that I was able to do. From the if we had to clean the bathrooms, I cleaned the bathroom. Drive the church bus. I remember back then when cable access first became available in cities. When I was younger, they didn't have cable. We didn't have cable. Then cable came around. Then cable access had to be in. So we did the cable access television ministry for our, that's how Nick Cannon started out. You know that, right?
Really?
Nick Cannon's daddy is a pastor.
I didn't. That doesn't surprise me, but I didn't know that.
He's a preacher's kid, and he used to do the cable access for his daddy. But I used to do cable access for our church. And my first church, my pastor was Italian. It was a mixed church.
Oh, okay.
It was 50% black, half and half black and white. After a few years, it was 95% black and 5% white because the white fight occurred again. Then I was that church for about 6 years. Then I went to another church, black church, to get that black experience. And, you go along and you get promoted incrementally in church. You be a deacon and you're elder and you're a minister. Right. And I was able to get promoted at each of these stages until you feel that call to step out on your own. We went to our pastor, said we felt the Lord calling us out, and he endorsed it. And I started my church with 4 members. Actually, in the very same place I'm at right now. I mean, my building is 120,000 square feet, but when we started there, we started out renting. We own the facility now, but I'm one of those churches that, unlike a lot of others, we never moved. We started there with 4 members, and we're still there 28 years later.
The same place.
And I own the entire block.
Okay. Wow. So, I mean, I would imagine that when
we did a lot of stuff in the meantime. We used to go minister to juvenile detention home centers, go down to the CPI, participate in crusades, and teach Bible studies and home Bible studies and all that. I mean, when we had a home Bible study at my house on Friday nights, it'd be 60 or 70 people would be in my house.
Wow.
Right? Because back then, see, when I was coming up, and I gotta say, we didn't go to the movies. You didn't do that. You didn't go to the movies. That was too secular. That was too carnal. That was too worldly. We didn't go to the movies. We watched very little television. On Friday and Saturday night, we didn't go out. We didn't do that stuff. Our idea of a good time was get together, read and study and share the Bible with each other. So that's what we did. We didn't do a lot of that other stuff that Christians do today.
So, I mean, and you kind of alluded to it just now. I was going to ask, I mean, I would imagine in your ministry, you worked with a lot of the kids who got into the same lifestyle as you did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was for the ones who got out of it and who you led out of it, what was it that did it?
I don't know. I think I was a positive role model for them. A lot of people, some people will wind up in my church didn't even know I was a pastor because, back in the streets, we had nicknames. So it's guys I grew up and never even knew my name. They just knew, and they would come along. But I think I provided a role model for them. A lot of guys that had been to the penitentiary and were at that crossroads in their life where they knew they couldn't continue on the way that they were continuing. And also I think the message would appeal to them. And then my interaction with them. I didn't become holier than thou because I was a Christian or because I was a pastor. I see him and say, "What up, my nigga?" Just like I said it.
Right.
Like I still say it now. You know what I mean? And so I didn't, the phony, the religiosity was never there with me. And as a result, I think that made my presentation to them a little more effective.
Okay, and that kind of ties into what I want to talk about in a second here. But before we get into the other stuff, I want to remind you to head on over to libertynation.com, where you can get the latest cutting-edge conservative news and analysis with none of that boring spin and the usual regurgitated talking points that you have become so accustomed to. You get all the news and analysis with all of the nuance. When you go to Liberty Nation, and read those articles, you're going to get a deep dive into the issues of the day. You're going to get insightful analysis, and you're always going to come away with something to think about, whether you agree or not, and whether you're a traditional Republican or a libertarian or a conservatarian like myself, or we've even got people there who are more anarchists. So if you'll get a right-wing opinion from a lot of different viewpoints. So check out new and original material on libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback. So, Pastor, yesterday I came across a study. It was just released. The results were just released. It was in Deseret News. And if I would have thought of it, I would have sent to you so you can check it out. I'll send to you anyway because I think you'll find it interesting. But it was talking about church attendance and religion in America. And what it found a lot of different things, Pastor. But I mean, it noted that since 1996, church attendance has been going down, which we all know that. I mean, that's kind of been the trend, unfortunately. But it also noted that Americans have not given up on religion. Like it found that 7 out of 10 people believe that praying for other people was important. A lot of people still profess to believe in God. Now, the amount of people who believe in the Christian God that you and I believe in, it fell to about 54%, but people are still very much in touch with their spirituality. So in short, non-religiosity or atheism has not really become much of a major influence. And people are still seeing the value of spirituality and even community in church, but they're just not doing it. So I've been wondering this for years. Why, if people are still think that having a religious belief is important, why have we seen such a decline in church attendance? I know COVID, wiped some of that out, but this was going on even before that. Why, in your estimation, from what you've seen, why do you think that that's happening?
First of all, I would like to say I think that there needs to be, in that type of study, 2 studies. Because to be quite honest, whether we want to admit it or not, you have the black church, you have the white church. And
it does address that, actually.
Excuse me?
It does address the black church, and black people are still going to church at very high numbers. High numbers.
So, what it is? Black people are spiritual by nature. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, when I say spiritual, I didn't say Christians. I said spiritual by nature.
Sure.
Black people as a whole, we are in touch with our spirituality, whether it's the true God or not. Black people try to be a little more, and we're a little more disciplined to respect authority or authority figures in our life, whereas the white church people are more resistant to authority. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah.
When I was out in the streets, there were still things that were taboo. Like, if we was out in the streets when I was coming up drinking, you ain't drink. Hey man, that's a church right there. You can't drink right there near that church.
Right? Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
You don't cuss in front of the church. There was a respect there that the black community had and still has, for the most part, because of that. But one thing that hurt church attendance is social media. Because when I was coming up, there weren't many anti-church negative influences that we had to deal with. If we did have to deal with them, they were usually in the form of a person or two that had a bad church experience. Yes. We didn't get inundated with it. We didn't get it. Whereas now on social media, you have so many things. And if you're unlearned and unskilled in the word of God, you have a lot of people that will sway you to convince you that God does not exist, that this whole thing in church is simply an exercise of futility and all of that. So I believe because of the negative influence that are pervasive in American society, that contributes to it.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, especially when we have this culture that tells you that you can kind of pick and choose what you like. Yeah. I mean, because a lot of people aren't becoming atheists, but I've noticed that a lot of people are kind of, I mean, this has always been a thing, but I see that more. Like people will pick and choose which parts of the Bible they want to believe. And, and they might have a bad experience at church. But what
they don't see any objectivity in the church experience. In other words, to me, church can be objective and subjective at the same time. Objectively, Jesus saves. Subjectively, Jesus saved me. And so, but they're trying to do away with the objectivity of church and let everybody have a subjective experience. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll elevate that subjective experience to be absolute truth. God is whatever you want him to be. And if you want whatever you want God to be, nobody can tell you God is not what you want him to be. Yes, I can tell you God. God is an objective reality, not a subjective reality.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that they want to do away with. And as a result, there's a time in the Bible where it says every man did what was right in his own eyes. And that's where we're at right now. People can pick and choose who or what they want to worship as God and say, you can't tell me otherwise.
So let me ask you this. What, if any, mistakes do you think that the church has made when it comes to allowing that influence to basically override their influence? Because the church was very, very influential, and it still is, but its influence has dropped. And I'm wondering if you see any flaws in the way church art is doing things that have maybe driven people away, or at least just failed to keep them in church.
Well, we have a saying, we say some are called, some are sent, and some just went. And there are a lot of people in the pulpits that are cowards, and they're afraid to go against societal norms. They're afraid to take objective stances against certain things. That they're afraid. They're even afraid to say that your God is not the true God, mine is. And so you have those that are so afraid to offend someone, they're afraid to say that Allah is not God. I'm not afraid to say it. And so they'll try to combine it and say Chrislam, Christianity, Islam. No, the two are like oil and water. They do not mix. And you have those that are afraid to take objective stances against homosexuality, against a lot of the norms of society, and that has watered down the message because the messenger himself is flawed. And as a result, it undermines the effectiveness of the church.
Yeah, I was so I don't know if you know Demetrius Minor, but he's also a preacher. He's in the conservative movement too. But we were talking about, because I brought up how back in the day, pastors weren't afraid to say what they needed to say, and I think in one instance that may have also driven people away, not because they made those statements, but because of the spirit behind it. And he brought up an interesting point. I mean, a lot of times we take these stands, whether it's in the conservative movement or in the church, but the stands aren't based on Christ's love. It's based on a sense of, I want to be right, and I want to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Right.
And so for me, I mean, I've never had anything against church, but one of the things that really turned me off is what I just described, and how, when I used to go to church and everybody's perfect. Everybody's just a perfect angel. Nothing is going wrong. Like when you just described how you approach things, like if I went to your church, I'd be like, this guy is a real person because he doesn't pretend to be perfect. He doesn't pretend like he doesn't have issues or that he doesn't have stuff that he needs to overcome, and talk about how Christ saved him from that. He can talk about those things and still be a real person. And it seems to me that the church has gone the other way because they say, okay, we're not going to talk about what's wrong, but now we're going to be Joel Osteen and pretend like everything is just hunky-dory. Christ loves you and he has a great plan for your life, which is true. That's true. But at the same time, they haven't found the balance. And I think that they've alienated a lot of people because a lot of Christians like to judge. I mean, if a woman has an abortion, we talked about this, a lot of churches, they don't come around that person and love them. You can still affirm that it's wrong, but still say, you know what, you did it. And you know what, we're going to support you through that. We're going to put our hands on you. Yeah. It feels like a lot of that is missing, Pastor. Or am I wrong? I mean, have you seen something different?
No, you're absolutely right. Somebody, they tried to nail me to the wall one time on CNN or one of those shows and said, do you think homosexuality is a sin? And I said, I think cigarette smoking is a sin. I think alcohol drinking is a sin. I said, it's a whole lot of things I think is a sin that I think is a sin. And so you're not going to make me change the way I think because it's popular or unpopular. Yes, I think homosexuality is a sin. Now, do I hate homosexuals? No.
Right.
I had a guy in my church that contacted me. He's been going there for some time. And he contacted me and said he had something he wanted to talk about. He was kind of afraid to talk to me about it. But then he told me that I'm battling with these homosexual inclinations. And I said, man, I'm going to help you through it. I'll try to help you through this because it's let me tell you something. If it was natural, he wouldn't be battling with it. He wouldn't be fighting it. He wouldn't be resisting it. He wouldn't be feeling a certain way about it. And now, did I judge him? No. Did I kick him out of the church? Of course not. Did I tell anybody? I didn't tell anybody. This is something that he and I know about. And so I'm not going to make him feel any less than a man or any less than a human because this is something he's dealing with. And that's what a lot of pastors tend to do. A lot of people in church tend to do. act as if they're perfect and other people are imperfect. And as a result, it makes people feel uncomfortable in that environment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm uncomfortable. I'm too flawed to be in this environment. I'm too dirty to be in this environment. And it chases a lot of people away.
Yeah, I mean, because it does send that message. People don't mean to send that message. I don't believe they do, but they do. I mean, if you go into a place and everybody's talking about, oh, God's so good, and and I'm not saying that's wrong because God is good, but I mean, it's like they don't seem like real people. And the thing is, even you can come in like you did to church, and you'll be able to you know that they're not as perfect as they're making it sound. It's like church is like Instagram, like everybody's pretending to be perfect, and I'm like, no, let's just be real. No, I don't need to know your whole life story, but I'm just saying, like, if you're a pastor and you're leading a flock and you're telling me why I should come to Christ, tell me about what you went through. But don't come off like you're just so perfect now. People always have battles, even when you're in Christ. And I think when people see that, if somebody's a non-believer and they see, okay, these people are just like me. They just found salvation in Christ and he has changed their lives. I think that's a far more attractive message than either saying you're a horrible person and if you do this sin, then you're nothing, or just saying, I'm perfect, which still sends the same message because I'm perfect. That means you suck if you have this certain struggles.
And you try to tailor your message when you preach to your masses. And so you try to tailor something and touch hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Give those that are listening something that's relatable, interesting, instead of you just over top of everybody's heads trying to impress them with your biblical knowledge and your vocabulary. And after people sitting there like, man, I don't even know what this dude is talking about. And so you try to get there.
Might as well be speaking Chinese.
And you try to give them something where you can penetrate hearts. Now, in the black church, the black preacher will endeavor to touch the heart, while the white preacher will touch the head. And so that's why when your heart is touched, you will emote. When your head is touched, you won't. And that's why you'll say, well, the white church is just dry, because you're trying to speak to them intellectually and they're sitting there nodding in agreement. Whereas the black person, they're hitting them emotionally. And when there's nothing wrong with being emotional, if you can give them intellectuality and emotionalism, then that's a good thing. Don't condemn us for being emotional, because you're touching our heart. And if you touch my heart, it's going to elicit a response. And to be quite honest, God deals with the heart more than he deals with the mind. God bypasses your mind and deals with your heart, because your heart and your mind are in opposition to each other. How do you know? Because sometimes you get a woman that's in love with a man they can't stand.
Yeah, that's true.
Mentally, I don't need to be with this person, but emotionally, I'm attached. So that shows you that there's a war between the intellect and the emotions.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to try to touch both. If you can give people some inspiration to accompany the information, you give them some intellect and you give them a balance of emotion, they'll connect and they'll stay connected. And, I have a lot of people that'll say, say, Pastor, I've been to your church and I'm honest enough to say I'm still out there. But I'm going to get it together one day and I'm going to be there. Now, I'm not going to sit there and kick them up their butt and, hey, you're still out there. Hey, man, you know where we at. Know where you know. And they acknowledge I'm not doing right. I acknowledge I'm doing wrong. But that's a conclusion they have to be drawn to.
Yes.
I can't beat nobody over their head and make them get saved, man. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, you can't. And even in the vein, because I'm going to shift the topic a little bit, as far as women being with men that they can't stand, how did you and your wife hold it together for 40 years? You're about to celebrate, or did you already?
We just had 40 years. Yeah, we've been together 43 years.
How?
I believe our personalities are complementary because she's nothing like me.
Okay.
So there's a balance there.
Okay.
And like I told you earlier off camera, one thing we've done is not the Bible says, let not be angry. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down on your wrath. So even if we've argued, there have always been certain parameters, certain lines. I've never lost and called her out her name.
Right.
I mean, if I did, you'd be talking about the man I used to be, because I'd be in a hole in the ground, buried dead somewhere.
Right. I'd be having this interview with your gravestone.
Even in any arguments that we've had, I remember years ago when her and I used to teach a little Bible class over at the church we used to go to. I wasn't pastoring yet. And somebody said, "Do you two ever argue?" And my wife said, "Not in front of you." That's the black mentality anyway. But the thing is, we try not to let the sun go down on our wrath, and we try to put each other first. You know, I don't have a problem. I like to cook. I don't have a problem. I serve my wife breakfast in bed every Saturday morning. Nice. I enjoy doing it. I get up before her. I go in there. Hey, I'm the best short order cook in America. Can't nobody cook eggs and omelets and bacon and all that better than me. And I like waking her up. You know what I say when I wake up? I say room service, and I bring her breakfast in bed. She indulges me the same way. We have no problem indulging each other. And, you know, when I'm wrong, she has no problem addressing that. She ain't never wrong, so I don't address that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really address it. Yeah.
Yeah. I like something I heard a guy say one time. This white dude said, he said, women. His wife was busting his chops. He said, women, you can't live with them, and you can't kill them.
You can't kill them. Nope.
But I don't know, man. Whatever it is with me and her, it just worked. You know what I mean? It worked, and I appreciate the fact that it worked. You know, and we've been through a lot together. And as a result, you know, I've been self-employed. I went into business for myself in 1985. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I've been self-employed. So we basically had to live by faith. You know, you go into business for yourself. I've been self-employed since I started my church in 1994, but I've been self-employed since 1985. I was 27 years old. But prior to that, I was self-employed out in the streets.
Right, exactly.
When we had that nightclub downtown that we took our dope money and got, I was self-employed then. I had a small window. I worked at Ford Motor Company for a little bit of time. And I had another job at a hotel, a little small window of working for somebody else. But for the majority of my life, I've been self-employed. And with her being with that in me together, we had to make it work. And in making what we did work, it made the marriage and everything else have to work along with it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of it was working together as a team.
Yeah. I mean, when we first started preaching, man, my wife is a co-pastor with me. In fact, my wife preached better than I do. And so we always started out equal. Pulpit. We used to stand there in the pulpit together, get some old tapes, tag team. That's how we preached. Tag team together. And I gave her equal authority in the church. Everybody sees her. They like her better than me. I always joke. I said, if me and her ever divorced, I know who y'all going with. Y'all going with her. Y'all ain't going. Jeff, she's a better pastor than I am. I'm being honest because
wow.
When I say pastor, I mean, she shepherds them in a way that she mothers our church.
Okay.
And there's a different type of mother love than there is a father's love. You know what I mean? And so as a result, they gravitate to her more. I mean, she's just like that. She's a people magnet. She's very charismatic and it's genuine. You can tell it's genuine. So she does so many things out of her heart that we just don't sing, you know, from the rooftops, man. I don't get on Twitter and try to do my alms, but I bought so many cars, bought so many houses, paid so many house notes, fed hundreds of thousands of people. You know what I mean? There's so much money that we've invested from the ministry and people. They think churches just take us. Let me tell you something. My church don't pay me. I give more money to my church than any of my members. I'm the biggest tither at New Spirit Revival Center. My church does not pay me. And so when people get on there and try to act like you just wanted fake preachers to build the congregation, my church has never paid me. My church was 10 years old before I took a small salary. When I say small, I'm talking about $25,000 a year.
Wow.
You see, that was then. And then I stopped doing that. I give more money to my church than any member in my church. And so, you know, that's when people say that, it rolls off my back because I'm not the one. I don't do that. I always told my church when I started my church, I said, let me tell y'all something. I took a pay cut to do this. I was driving a brand new Mercedes when I started my church. My wife was driving a Lexus. I had a house in the white community. At that time in 1994, the house was $400,000. It's probably $1 million house now. I didn't do it for money. So you see what I'm saying? And so when those accusations come out, they roll right off my back. I've never did it for money. I've never relied on church as my source of income. And so that's to me, that's something I can be, I don't want to say proud of, but I can default to that position when people try to make certain accusations.
Well, but I mean, your church is doing the work, it sounds like. I mean, your church
Yeah.
is doing what a church is supposed to do. And it seems like, I mean, I think there's still plenty of churches doing that, but there need to be more. I mean,
Yeah.
as conservatives, we always talk about how it shouldn't be welfare that takes care of people. It should have been the churches because that's how it used to be. But now it's like, you know, it's that doesn't seem to be the emphasis a lot of times.
Yeah, but you know what? The church takes care of the people that take care of the church. Now, see, I have a
That's
different
true.
perspective
That's true.
on if I do something for the community, it's because I want to, not because I have to.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. You can't take a person like me that I renounced the streets, gave my life to the Lord. Now I'm going to take 10% of my income and give it to the church. I'm not giving it to the church so they can take it and give it to the people that have not renounced the streets. You understand what I mean? I'm not going to take the money for people that want to build up the kingdom of the Lord and give it to the people that are trying to build the devil's kingdom. I'll use my father as an example. My father always had a good job. But you know what that Negro used to do? He got paid on Thursdays. Every Thursday, he would go downtown, he'd work downtown, he'd get his check, and coming up the hill to the house, he would stop at 4 or 5 churches because they had those food bank programs.
Right.
And he would get a bag of food from, and this is a Negro with a good job. A bag of food from here, a bag of food from there. He hit 4 or 5 churches on the way back. He come home, we had so much cheese, it was pitiful. He come home with all that food.
Yeah, church cheese, not government cheese.
That man would not put $1 in a church. My father wouldn't put $1 in the church and never would he wouldn't even come to my church. He wouldn't set foot in the church. Now, see, when I think of that, I'm like, man, now here these decent, hardworking people donate their money for this stuff so this guy can pimp us out and take advantage of us. Notice something. You didn't see Jesus say, come on, Peter, James, John, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, let's go down in the poor area of town and turn stones into bread so all the people can eat. Jesus fed the people that came to listen to him. And when they got through listening to him, that's when he fed them. Now, I'm sorry, but that's my perspective. That's my interpretation of it. If I do something for a community, it's because I want to, not because I have to.
Right.
And they try to make pastors think they have to, like, you're supposed to get all the money from the church and give it to the world for them to, so that they can mishandle their own money.
Right.
I can
no, yeah, I mean, you have to be a good steward.
My money in riotous living and have you take care of the bill.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you do have to be a good steward over it. I mean, when God gives you something, you do have to use it wisely, use it in a way that's actually going to build things up. So that makes sense.
The Bible says, "I would that you do good to all men, but especially to those of the household of faith." So with me, church first. I take care of my members that are disenfranchised first. Then after that, I'll look out for others. And we've done a lot for the community. So, but I don't do it as a gimmick. I don't do it because the other one's just doing it. I don't think giving out book bags is effective. I don't think, we're giving out free haircuts. How long that's going to last? A week? You understand what I mean? What happens in society is we endeavor to put a Band-Aid on things that need surgery.
Yes.
And we keep putting Band-Aids on it, but it's not healing the wound. It's just covering it up. It needs surgery.
It covers it up. Yeah, it makes it look good, but it doesn't actually heal. Yeah. I was talking to King Randall about that a while ago. Like, one of the reasons why he got the idea for what he's doing is because a lot of the programs, they have, like, after school programs, basketball camps, which are fine. But I mean, you're only going to be in a basketball camp for a few months and then you're right back to the streets. That's why with his organization, he wants them to stay with him, like, over the long term, to break that mindset and to get people out, get kids out of that environment. So his wants to go beyond the Band-Aid and actually do that surgery. So I know what you're talking about. I mean, it seems like we just do stuff to make us feel like we're doing something, but in reality, it's not doing that much.
There's a component in man. There's a religious component in mankind. And there's a component of man that wants to do something. You're right. For the sake of doing something. But it's oftentimes what we're doing, we'll look up. I mean, I know churches that gave away groceries and gave away book bags and gave away gas cards and did all of that. And when they weren't giving them away, the people weren't there. The Bible even talks about with Jesus that there were some who only followed him for the miracles that he did.
Right.
You understand what I mean? There are some people that only want to participate out of selfish motivation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for what I can get out of it. And the minute
like Judas.
I can't, I had a guy tell me one time before, and he thought he was saying something good. He said, Pastor, this church is blessing me, and as long as the church is blessing me, I'll be here. I said, man, you can bounce now. Because that's I don't, what do you mean? You need to say, as long as you're being a blessing to the church, we'll let you be here. We're not here to cater to you. We're not here to bless you. Who do you think you are? That as long as I'm being blessed, I will be here. So your motivation is selfish. It's totally selfish. When you're supposed to have an unselfish motivation to be here.
Well, yeah, and the church is supposed to equip believers to go out and, do the good work, spread the gospel and all that. It's not that church can't bless you. I mean, yeah, of course, but the purpose of the church, the purpose of a pastor is to equip people with what they need to do what they need to do in their own life and walk in their own calling. Right, at least that's the way I always read it.
Yeah, I didn't go into the church dynamic, looking to see what I could get out.
Right.
I went into the church dynamic looking to see what I could put in.
Yeah.
I've got a chauffeur's license. Can I drive the church bus? Oh, they have cable access now, and I heard that they will allow free cable access to churches. Hey, can I do that? And I went in there looking to see what I could put in, not looking to see what I can get out. And that's what the mindset of a lot of people are. They want to see what they can get. They all talk about what they can get out, but they don't talk about what they can put in. A lot of people, all they want to put in is their opinion on what they think things should be, how things should be. And that's not right.
Yeah, all they want to put in is telling you what you're doing wrong or what they don't like.
Let me tell you something. Over the years, the politicians always show up to church. And I've had a lot of them. Barack Obama, that's how I know him. He was at my church when he was still a Senator Obama. He came to my church before. I know a lot of those politicians. And what they used to do, they would come into your church, right? Every 2 to 4 years, here they come. The politicians, they come and they want to get up and address your congregation, right? And then leave. And I got sick of that crap. So when they started coming to mine, I wouldn't let them get up until after the message was over. Y'all can sit there and listen, right? And then after the message was over, I had an offering and I'd watch. And if they ain't put nothing in that offering, I didn't let them get up. I didn't care if they put $1 in. I wouldn't care if they put $0.25 in. I wouldn't care if they put 50 cents in. It wasn't the amount. It was just the activity of the heart. I'm like, you came in here to get something out of us. You didn't come in here to put anything into us. And I would sit there and watch. And the word got out. And they stopped coming around. But y'all ain't gonna come here and pimp my church out. You want to stand up there for 15 minutes and do all that. I said, no, y'all gonna listen to the message first. Because what they would do, they would listen. They would say what they had to say and then bounce before I preach.
Yeah. What's funny though is that they could have just learned the lesson and then came back and then dropped $5 in the offering and then got to say what they needed to say.
They could have dropped it. Act like you're putting something in there. But don't just sit there when the people getting for the offering. You ain't doing. You just, when you gonna let me get up? When you gonna let me get up? No, you ain't getting up. Wow. And I tell them too, hey, man, you ain't getting up, because I just wanted to see what their motivation was. And like I said, y'all ain't gonna come over here, and I'm not gonna see you again for 2 more years. I'm not gonna see you again for 4 more years.
Wow. So speaking of politics, that's a nice transition. You've been very close with President Trump even before he decided to run for president. Were you always into politics, or did you kind of get more involved when Trump was thinking about running, or how did that happen?
As a pastor, the politicians gravitate towards you.
Right.
A lot of people don't know. I've got awards from the NAACP. I've got awards from the Urban League. I can go get them right now. Hold them up on screen. From the Urban League. And I voted the person, not the party. I voted for Reagan. I voted for Clinton. I voted for Bush. I voted for Obama the first time. Okay. But I only did that because he was black. I used to say back then, if I close my eyes and listen, I'm going with a McCain. But if I open my eyes and look, I gotta go with the black man.
At least you're honest about it.
I went with the black man the first time. Plus, I had met him, even though I didn't care for him when I met him. He had been to my church before, but I used to vote the person and not the party. when Trump came along and to say, a lot of people don't know Trump was going to run in 2012. And I was with him then. I met him around 2010. He was going to run in 2012 against Obama. And I was with him then. He decided not to run. In 2015, he called, I'm going in, you with me. Now, I was with him. He was number 17 in a field of 17 in the primary.
Right.
If he'd have bounced, I'd have bounced with him. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
He out, I'm out. He went from number 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and then he won. What you want us to do? He messed around and won. What you want me to do? Oh no, y'all! I'm sorry. He won. I'm out. I'm not doing that. Now, if he'd got bounced in the primary, I'd have bounced right along with it. But he didn't, so I didn't. You know what it was? You're black, you know. We ride or die, man.
Yeah.
He was my friend. I roll with it. Yeah. If you announce today you are running for office because we're friends, I'm rolling with you. And when you lose, I'm out. I'm out too. That's just how we are. I came out them streets. That was how I called him. You ride or die. And as long as he was riding, I was riding with him. If he died, I'd have died with him. That's just the way it was. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he was my friend. And I went with my friend. And that's just all there was to it. Yeah. Do we agree on everything? No. Are we going to disagree in public? No.
Right. Yeah,
do I agree with everything he says? No, I don't. Am I going to disagree in public? No, I'm not. But I like that with all of my friends.
But I like that you'll actually talk to him about it too. Like you won't just like go along with whatever he says. I've heard a lot of your stories. I mean, and you'll check him when you feel like he's doing something wrong.
He and I have had heated arguments. We had one at Bedminster this past summer. But the thing I like is this: like he asked me, "Why didn't you take a job in the administration?" Because he offered me something. And I said, because I'd have got fired. Like I said, Jeff, I've been self-employed since 1985. I ain't used to answering to nobody.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? I can call my own shots. And so I said, I would have got fired. But if I had taken a job in the administration, it would have changed the dynamics of our relationship. Right now, he and I have a horizontal relationship. Even though I'm going to give him his props for being my president, but we have a horizontal relationship. If I go to work for him, we got a vertical relationship.
That's true.
And the dynamics of our relationship change. And I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to tell him to kiss my ass if I have to. and vice versa. Yeah. You know, and I don't want to have to be worried. Am I going to lose my job? I don't want to do that. I want to be honest with him. And I think he respects my honesty, but I would never uncover him in public. I would never voice our disagreements in public.
Right.
That's why a lot of candidates I've refrained from endorsing up here in Ohio and everyone. I want to see who he's going to endorse because I don't want the appearance of friction to be between us.
Well, because you know the media will say, "Oh, Pastor Scott is going against Trump." I mean, they're already doing it with him and DeSantis. So,
man, he's my friend whether he's president or not. And once again, a lot of times, if Trump appears crazy, it's a control crazy. In other words, he knows what he's doing. Yeah, and oftentimes you'll look back and say he was right. He was right. He's good at making it seem like he's just throwing some stuff out there. But believe me, that man knows what he's talking about when he's talking. He doesn't just throw out stuff scattershot and haphazard. And a lot of times you'll look up and say, you know what? He said he was being spied on. He was being spied on.
Yeah, he was. He was. Yeah.
He said a lot of things that as time goes on, he's proven to be right.
Yeah. I mean, because he knows that they may try to make him sound crazy in the moment, but it's only going to be a matter of time before people will be saying Trump was right, and that's what's happening.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but I told him back in 2015. I said, man, if you can show the people out there what I see back here, you'll win the election. Mm-hmm. And he won the election. Yeah. Do I believe that there was some election fraud? Hell yeah, I believe it. Yes, I believe it. Yes, I'm a pastor, and I said hell. But you know what I believe? I believe the election fraud occurred with the mail-in balloting. I don't know about all this rigging machines and all that, but you get a month to mail in some ballots, that's rife for strife. You know, I was at the White House on election night, me and my partner Kareem Lanier. And when they called when they called off the count, right? And I looked at him and it was 4 counties left. There's one in Philly, one in Milwaukee, one in Georgia, and one in Michigan. And I said, man, is them black counties? He said, yeah. I said, we screwed. Then
Oh,
all of a
Lord.
sudden, overnight, here come boxes of ballots that are 99-1 by those. The mail-in ballots were the easiest to commit fraud with. So that's what I think. And you know what I think? I think a lot of it took place in the black precincts, because if the accusations fly, then the racism is the counter argument to that.
And that's
So
what they've been
that's my
using.
personal
Yeah.
belief. And I
They've been
told
saying
Trump
that.
that. I said, man, I believe that the malfeasance was in the mail-in ballots, not necessarily the people that showed up at the polls. It might have been some there, but I think the mail-in ballots were where the malfeasance occurred. And I believe that predominantly it was done in black precincts because, once again, you have less oversight in those precincts because those are
Right.
usually Democratic controlled precincts.
Yeah. So what is as far as what you can tell me, well, what's going on with the Trump camp right now? What's going on with Team Trump? What he's got cooking up? I'm not going to ask you if he's running again.
I mean,
I know you can't tell me. So but.
I was with him last week. I've seen him probably a couple of times a month for the last several months. He's in
Yeah, it seems like you've been down there a lot. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
I'm getting sick of going down there though. Yeah, up and down. I'm too old, man. I'm too old to try, like some people say, well, you're jealous of this, you're jealous of Candace. And I'm too old to be jealous of anybody. I've got a healthy self-opinion. I'm not trying to get anywhere that I'm not already at.
Right.
So, that's like me saying I'm jealous of my dog Yogi because he can run faster than me. What the heck?
Well, people just say that stuff and they don't have anything to say, though, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, they just say that stuff because they don't have an argument. So
yeah, but here's the thing. Do I think he's going to run? I think the signs indicate that he is. I think he's building up a head of steam, but he's not announcing yet because the minute he announces, all of his dynamics change.
Mm-hmm.
The minute he announces, there's going to be a level of accountability that has to be there that is not there as a private citizen. I give a case in point. There was a guy I know that wanted to donate something to him. Mm-hmm. And from their company, they manufacture certain items. They wanted to donate something to him. And they contacted me about donating to him. I said, well, now's the time to donate it because he's a private citizen.
Right.
If you wait until he declares, you're not going to be able to donate it as clean as you can donate it now. You understand what I mean? And so
yeah.
Right now, he needs to enjoy being a private citizen for as long as he can. Because once he announces there's a different level of scrutiny, I mean, he's already under an immense amount of scrutiny, but there's a different level of scrutiny that he'll find himself under. I mean, not that he's trying to engage in anything underhanded, because he's not.
Right.
Still, it's a smart thing not to declare yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I figure if he is going to declare, it's going to be sometime after the midterm. So,
right.
But it seems like he's mainly focused on the midterms, right? Like trying to make sure that he gets people that are more America first in office rather than the establishment, which I like. I like that he's doing that.
Yeah, he's doing that. But I really believe in order for those candidates to be effective, they have to have more than just American first. Like, can we be blunt on here?
Yep, very blunt. As blunt as you want.
Your qualifications have to be more than I'm swinging off Trump's nuts. I'm being honest.
I agree.
You understand? And so, and he doesn't look at it like that. I know him. That's not what he's looking at. It's not about, I talked to a guy yesterday. They wanted my endorsement. I said, what's your platform? Well, I'm America First. Well, I'm MAGA. Well, all of the things that I'm in agreement with. So then I said, what are the demographics of your district that you're running in? And I said, what is the median income level?
Okay.
He said they're around $23,000 a year. I said, so what platforms do you have that are going to improve them economically? Huh? I said, man, what do you have? I understand all of that other stuff you're saying is good.
Yeah.
But that should be.
Yeah.
That should be icing on the cake.
Yes. Yeah.
That should be, I'm also pro-Trump. Not the only thing I have going for me is that I'm pro-Trump. You know, it's something I said about Obama. I said this about Obama back in 2008. I said, if the only reason you vote for this guy is because he's black, is an insult. Because you're saying he's not qualified. You're saying that his only qualification is being black. The only reason you're voting for this dude is because he's black. That's an insult. You have to say he's qualified and he's black.
He's black, yeah.
Not he's black, but not qualified, but because he's black. I said, you know what? I don't hire a plumber just because he's black. I don't get somebody to cut my grass just because they're black. They got to be able to be a good plumber. They got to be able to cut grass good. Being black, maybe that's an extra incentive. Maybe that tips the balance.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Like, okay, I got this. And because I'm black and they're black, I'm going to get the black plumber. But if I'm not going to get a black plumber just because he's black and he can't plumb. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I said, you have to have more. And Trump has even said that. You have to have more than just, I like Trump. I like Trump and I have a policy. I have ideas, innovation that will improve my district. And so a lot of people have jumped out there just thinking that because I love Trump, they're going to get the votes, and it doesn't always translate like that.
Yeah, so you're seeing the same stuff I'm seeing, Pastor. I mean, because people will come to me and they'll be like, what do you think of such and such candidate? What do you think of this person running in this district? And I won't even look at it. I won't even look at them. I will respond back and I'll say, go to the website. Do me a favor, go to the website and tell me what policies they have on there.
Right.
Oh, well, I went to the website. Oh, I didn't really see any policy. Okay, then I'll go look. Oh, I don't see any policy. Okay, they're not serious. So I'm not even going to give them any attention. Like, they'll just say I'm running because I'm pro-Trump. I'm black and, you know, I'm America first. Here's my link to where you can donate to my campaign. Right. Like if that's all I see, I won't even touch them. And I will advise people, you know, watch out for that, because
give me an original idea to go along.
Yes.
To go along with my pro-Trump, America first, MAGA platform. But, you know, and a lot of people get disappointed because they think just because, well, I'm pro-Trump and I supported him from the beginning, and then they get upset if he doesn't endorse. But I know for a fact, he wants to know the policy platforms. He wants you to come to the table and tell me, other than, sir, I like you, sir. I've been with you from the very beginning. I supported you from the very beginning. I voted for you. I supported you from the very beginning. He's like, contrary to popular opinion, he doesn't just sit there and want his ego fed. Mm-hmm. Bring me something substantive to the table. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a guy that's pro-Trump that wanted his endorsement. And I had a talk with him about it. And Trump was very knowledgeable on this person. But he said, this person subscribed to this person endorsed that. This person was, he was pro-abortion back at one time. This person was anti this and that. So, you know, he might be with me now, but based on where he's been, you get what I'm saying? Based upon policy platform, I can't just endorse him because he said I like Trump. And you don't know how many people are saying the fake I like Trump just so they can get some Trump.
I'm sure there's a lot,
because they recognize the power of his movement.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, because we have to be so careful. And I even wrote an article saying, like, the primary season for this midterm is probably even going to be more important than the actual midterms, because we have a lot of people out there and they're not all real, and people don't always pay attention. They don't turn out for the primaries. And then we wonder why we get stuck with these people in Congress who don't do anything. Or maybe they talk a good game, or maybe they're entertaining, or maybe they say the things that you like, but they're in Congress and they're not really doing anything. Well, that's our fault. Like, we need to be paying attention.
I know of a race with three candidates that I know. And all three of them are trying to say who's more pro-Trump than the other. And that's what their commercials consist of. But as far as anything to improve the standard or quality of living for their constituents, I haven't heard it. Maybe it's somewhere buried on the website. You understand? And so they have to bring more to the table than that.
See, and that's what I'm afraid of, Pastor, because I know the GOP is going to win at least the House, if not the Senate too. Yeah. But I mean, I'm just afraid that it's just not really going to mean anything. I mean, because it's just, I don't know. We keep making the same mistakes, and even with Trump on the scene, that's opened a lot of people's eyes. But it's like, it's like the Hotep say, it's grifting season. So people
back in 2018, they came to get me to run for Congress, right? In a certain district. I would have probably won, because I know the guy that was running, he had said it's a heavy pro-Trump district, and this guy had said some disparaging things to Trump before. And so, and you know, I asked a few questions when I said, well, am I gonna have to get up and go to work every day? Yeah. I mean, you'll have to go. I said, how often will I have to be up there? Like, well, at least once or twice a week. And then you get to go home. I said, well, I have to be there at a certain time. And it's not. And the guy that we're going to have me run against, I ran into him at the airport in D.C. one time. He came up, introduced himself to me because the noise that I was considering running, right? Which I never was, but I just let him say it. And when I met him, I said, hey, man, I heard you were saying some bad stuff about Trump. Oh, no. And he cleaned it up to me. He was a sitting congressman. He's still a congressman now. Mm-hmm. And I looked into his eyes. And I liked the dude, man. And I liked him. And I knew then, I said, I didn't tell him, but I knew then, I said, I was never going to really run anyway because, I told the people that would come to get me, and there were some party leaders. I said, man, I've been self-employed since 1985. I get up when I want to get up.
Right.
I go to bed when I want to go to bed. Yeah. I'm not used to having to answer to nobody. I'm too old and set in my, I said, I'm going to tell y'all this right now. Y'all elect me, I'm going to be the worst goddamn congressman up there. I'm going to be the one with the most no-show votes.
Yeah, you ain't even going to be showing up in D.C.
I have a fair assessment of myself. I'm telling you, pastoring is what I do. This is my calling. I love what I do. I've never considered not doing it. It's never crossed my mind, give up this for that. So that wasn't going to happen. This is my passion. Pastoring my church, preaching, that's my passion. This other stuff, I can take it or leave it.
Right. It's like a funny thing.
I told him, I said, man, I'll be the word. Twitter, I can take it or leave it. I don't care if every single one of my Twitter followers unfollow me right now. I don't care. That's what y'all don't know. Let me tell y'all, I don't care. I don't care if you like what I say. I don't care if you unfollow me. I don't care if I don't care. That's not reality. I don't care, man. I don't get a dime off Twitter.
Well, I can tell by the stuff that you tweet that you don't care if people follow you.
And some of y'all need to stop taking me so serious on there anyway.
Yeah, really. Yeah. And because sometimes I'll just look and I'll be like, oh, there goes Pastor again. Here we go.
Let me tell you something. That's why these other social media platforms, they're not gonna do what Twitter does. And it's only because like charges repel. Think about it. That's opposites attract. Like charges repel. It'll be so boring. I own a radio station. I don't know if you know that. I own a radio station. I actually know.
I know that.
In fact, you know what? I'll show it right here.
All right.
I won the Stellar Award, Large Market Gospel Radio Station of the Year.
Oh,
a few years ago. I own a gospel radio station. And so we used to do a lot of radio. I would do radio shows and I would debate the Bible on there. Okay. And so we would get people on and we'd debate the Bible, and there'll always be somebody. So one day we were having a debate, having a conversation on tithing, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody on there was like, oh, yes, you should tithe, and giving all their revelations on how you should tithe. After it went off, I said, man, that was the boringest show in the world. Go find me some people that don't believe in tithing and bring them on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now we can have some radio. So when I would do my radio programs, it would always be in the format of, all right, let me go get the Catholics and debate the Catholics. Now let me go get the Seventh-day Adventists and debate them. Now let me go get the Apostolics and debate them. Now we're going to debate whether it's oneness or Trinity. Now we're going to debate Calvinism versus Arminianism. That was my niche. And that's what I enjoyed doing. And so I said that to say this about social media. If we're on a platform where we all agree with each other, it's going to be the boringest doggone platform in the world.
It is.
You go to Twitter looking for smoke. You look for that smoke. That's why I don't do much of Facebook. Facebook too spiritual for me. Everybody on Facebook got these big long pictures. Everybody put their picture up all the time. Got their grandmother laying up on the ICU. Take a selfie. So I said one of these days on Facebook, somebody gonna take a picture of a dump they take in the toilet. They gonna post it. I took a dump. Look how good this dump looks. And I was saying to myself, I really don't do Facebook. You know what I do? I confine Facebook. If you look on me on Facebook, most of my stuff on Facebook is confined to the church world. With Twitter, you're out there in the streets.
Yeah, exactly. That is the best analogy. Like Twitter is the streets.
Yeah. And you go looking for that smoke. You know what I'm saying? You look for it.
I wish I could say that didn't apply to me, but it does.
Yeah,
you know I look for that smoke.
You're intentionally confrontational. You're intentionally combative. You know what I mean? But the thing is, don't be hypocritical with it, though.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and don't be a sellout. I can't be no sellout, man. I gotta go to bed at night and lay my head on the pillow.
So
I ain't be no sellout. Wasn't nobody up there with Trump shining shoes and Uncle Tom and none of that stuff. Anybody that knows me knows better than that. I ain't never been nobody's coon.
yeah. Well, and so in that vein, that kind of takes me to where I wanted to go to, at least for the last part. You know, you and I have both been critical of GOP black outreach, critical of Black Conservative Inc. and all that stuff. How do you see black outreach going in the Republican right now? Like, have you been seeing some of the moves they've been making, or if you have, what do you think?
It does not resonate with the man on the street. They're preaching to the choir.
Mm-hmm.
They're preaching to the choir. They're evangelizing the saved. They're trying to appeal to the ones we have instead of the ones we don't have. You understand what I'm saying? I'll give an example. I had a conversation with some people about a primary in a certain state, and they really didn't want to have any black outreach. And they said, well, we won't need the black outreach till the general. And I said, well, wait a minute. Can y'all at least try to appeal to the black Republicans? Don't you want the black Republican vote? Aren't you trying to sway the black Republican vote for your candidate? Don't discount that and say you don't need us until the general, and don't wait till the general to try to get us. And quit using these old cornballs and these cornball people that don't nobody on the street relate to. You know, my business partner Cream and I had a conversation with some movers and shakers up here in Ohio with the party. And they were talking about John James.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, John James is gonna get his butt whooped. Oh, what do you mean? I said, y'all keep picking up, no slight to him, but I'm keeping it real. I said, y'all keep getting these starch shirt buttoned up guys that talk a certain kind of way,
like me,
have a certain kind of wife, that look a certain kind of way, and y'all keep trotting them out, hoping Pookie and Ray Ray and Leroy Negroes. I said, y'all keep putting people out there that black people the man on the street don't relate to. But you know what he said? And it opened my mind. He said, but those are the ones we relate to.
Yeah, I remember you talking
about
that.
So it's an innocence there.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But you have to open your ears to listen to ones that tell you, listen, you know, here's the Republican Party. This is the problem with them. And I had this conversation on television. The person kind of got offended about it. Mm-hmm. I said, I was talking about black outreach. And they said, well, we don't want to pander. And I said, well, I said, you don't mind pandering to white folks?
Right.
You don't mind pandering to the suburban mom? I said, y'all are consider going to the barbecue and the cookout a pander. But the Lincoln Day dinner isn't. Oh, Lincoln Day dinner is a white version of the cookout.
It is. It's the exact same thing. The only difference is that the food isn't seasoned. That's the only difference.
So you know what I told him? I said, here's the problem. Before, you didn't need the black vote. Now you do. Yep. That sleeping giant done woke up and it ain't going back to sleep. Black people now realize we determine the results of elections. Now y'all can keep sitting there and trying to hold on to the VCR and you want to listen to cassette tapes, but focus digital now. The times have changed. Things ain't the way they used to be. Now you better change with the times. You better change with the times or you're going to look up and be out of time. And that's what the Republican Party, they better play some catch up and they better get some real niggas out here. I'm sorry. I hate to say I'm dropping the N-word, but hey, you better put some real niggas out there to help be the face of the party. Because if you want some vote, you can't keep going out here. I talked to a guy that's a street legend in Chicago, Mark Carter, came out to the streets and as a community activist. He said, man, I looked at you on TV. I saw the way you was kicked back in that chair. I watched your body language. I saw how you didn't have no necktie on. And I said, that ain't no coon right there. He said, once you opened your mouth, I knew you wasn't one. And that's just the bottom line. Y'all better get some people that are representative of those that you are trying to reach. Our policy works. Yeah. You know what they told me? They said, well, we just thought black people would listen to the policy and that we didn't have to pander, that they would embrace the policy. I said, if that's the case, why you campaigning to white people then? Why can't they hear the message?
Exactly.
Why you spending $1 billion to reach them? and don't want to spend $1 million to reach us? Why can't they just accept the policy the same way you
and then come to it's but that's the thing, Pastor. They say this stuff, and honestly, it's like you said, it's innocent. They're not really thinking this through, and that's the problem. And people got so mad at Shamika last year at CPAC when she said, there's different types of Black people. Like, I'm more the Carlton type. The way I talk is the way I talk. But you also need to people who come from more of your background to reach to different types of Black people, because we always say Black people aren't a monolith. Okay, yeah, we're not. So get different types of people to reach different types.
But you know what? You're the relatable Carlton. And I'm going to tell you why. What's my friend's name? Doggone it. His name is slipping me. He's a friend of mine. He's part owner of the Brooklyn Nets. He has Source Magazine was his. I haven't talked to him in a few years. Anyway, he's a lawyer. He grew up in the projects with Jay-Z and them, right? Mm-hmm. He lived among them, but he went to school. Mm. He didn't sell that. That's how, when I said Raymond was Assistant Secretary of Education, he was like that with us. He was my best friend in school. He lived in the neighborhood, but he went a different course, right? So he said, he went to school and wound up getting a law degree while Jay-Z and them was selling dope. But he knew all the guys from the neighborhood, right? And what happened, he became a lawyer. Now they blew up. They blew up from selling rap, and they needed a lawyer. Who we gonna get? Let's go get him.
Exactly. There you go.
Because even though he was not their kind, he was still their people. You see what I'm saying? He was still relatable to them. Mm-hmm. So that's why I would put you at. You're not the unrelatable Carl. Put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, that makes me feel better. I mean,
because you still got the lingo, and it's natural. It's not forced. You still got the lingo. You still got everything. You still got the swag, the Black swag, and it's not fake. It's the genuine Black swag.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't try to out-Black anybody. I am who I am. If you like it, great. If you don't, then I've got some words for you that I won't say right now. But
you know what it is? It's like a guy I knew one time. He had a limousine business. He said, "Man, y'all don't realize I'm just a refined street nigga." But he was polished. He had his presentation. He drove a lot of stars and entertainers. And if you didn't know better, but he came out to the streets, he just cleaned up his act. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I do see some positive signs that some people are starting to get it, but it's just, it's like they always use these excuses. You've talked about some of them, and I always bring this up. Governor Mike Huckabee, I interviewed him because when he ran for governor, he won 48% of the Black vote. And you were just talking about how these people were talking about, well, we don't need to deal with Black people until the general election. Huckabee talked about that. He said, that is an insult.
That is.
Like, you need to be showing up years before the election is there. So he was showing up. He was speaking at churches. He was going to the cookouts. He was going where he was invited. He was sitting down with Black people and saying, this is what I'm going to do. What do you need? And it didn't always go smoothly. A lot of people didn't like him because he was a white Republican, but he won like half the vote as a white Republican
in the
South. Like,
Huckabee was my choice for VP. But Trump wound up choosing Pence. In fact, Huckabee and I had that conversation. I said, man, I hope he pick you. But you know what? Huckabee, to your point, back in the RNC back in 2016, right? Mm-hmm. Huckabee play a mean bass. Did you know that?
I did. That's one of the reasons I like him, because I play bass too.
Huckabee looked at me because I was going to have him come play bass. He said, I got a lot of funk in this white boy. That's what he said to me. Yeah,
I've seen him play. He does.
There's a lot of funk in this white boy. He told me that out of his mouth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like he also told me that he, after like years later, like in like 2012 or so, he went to the RNC and saying, look, we need to start attracting Black voters. I can tell you how because I did it. And they blew him off. I'm like, dude, I hope it's changing. Like, I think it's starting to. I'm seeing some signs.
It's gonna have to. Because the Black community has awakened to the fact that our votes matter. Mm-hmm. And people are coming out, Black people are voting in record numbers now. That Black turnout is there. And you can't deny it. You can't overlook it. And it's influencing elections. And it's going to be critical in a number of these midterms. That Black vote is going to be the deciding factor in these elections. And you can overlook it all you want to. You know what I mean? But don't wait till 2022 or wait till 2024 or whatever, and run around trying to find some black folks, because it's going to be too late then. You got to start now.
Yeah.
And it has to be legitimate and it has to be genuine. And you know what? You have to. The main problem I had with the administration from 16 to 20 was the messaging. And I had a lot of heated conversations with the comms department at the White House. Trump got it. Y'all don't. Y'all got to get on point with this messaging, because all of these positive accomplishments that this administration is doing is not being messaged right, because you don't, sometimes it's the message, sometimes it's the messenger.
Right.
You can have the right message and the wrong messengers, and it's not going to resonate.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that's what's going to have to be done. They're going to have to get that message right, and they're going to have to get the messages, get the right messages to jump out there.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I wish we can go longer, but we got to do this again. And
I always talk. I know it.
No, I love it. You know, you got to have me back on your show again sometime too, because that was fun. Intense. But
I got to do my show. I'll be waking up in the morning. I don't feel like doing that show today. I'll be honest. I have to be honest. I ain't done it in 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks right now.
Really? See, that's what happens when you're self-employed, you know?
I don't feel like it today is Saturday. I'm in this bed, man. I don't feel like getting up doing this show, and I call her. You know how people do by calling in to the last. Yeah. I gotta cut that crap out before they cancel me.
Yeah, really. But before we go, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
What's my Twitter?
I don't know.
I think it's at Pastor D Scott. I'm not the one that set it up. Somebody in my church set it up for me, and I didn't really use it for a couple of years. I think it's at Pastor D Scott. Or you know what? Go to my church website, because a lot of people don't even think I pastor a church. They don't know I preach every Sunday. So go to www.nsrc. That's New Spirit Revival Center, nsrcministries.org. I also have a YouTube page, NSRC Ministries or New Spirit Revival Center. You can go to YouTube. You can pull up any sermon that I preach. You know one thing I get criticized a lot about? I get criticized about a whole lot of things. I don't get criticized about what I preach.
Oh, really?
And that's the one thing that I like. That's one thing that I can feel good about. I'm not accused of preaching false doctrine. I've had people that go, let me go see what that nigga's preaching so I can have something to say.
Yep.
And I've never once came back when anybody accused me of heresy or error or anything like that. So if I take pride in anything, it's that I'm true to that. You know what I'm saying? And so it is there. We stream live on Facebook Live every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. New Spirit Revival Center. So you can find me there. And I believe you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I got it up right now. And so, yeah, and your Twitter is Pastor D Scott. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks very much for coming on my podcast. Like, I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me, man.
Soon.
You know, you're liable to be shut down because of me now. I done cussed on you.
Oh, I've had much worse.
He's supposed to be a pastor, and he cussed.
Oh, well.
Did I cuss? I repent.
Yeah, there you go.
The one person came on there and said, how can you ain't no pastor, right? And so I came back with something, I don't know, they said, you ain't no pastor, you're a clown. I came back with something like, clown these nuts. You know what I mean?
You always say that.
And so then they turn around, how can you say that you're a pastor? You just said I wasn't a pastor. Well, I understand. You just said I wasn't.
Oh, man.
Now, if you want to talk to me in a non-pastoral way, don't expect a pastoral response. I don't know, man. I found out the hard way on Twitter. Sometimes my best defense is my offense.
Yeah. That's how it goes down sometimes. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
God bless you.